Good morning. This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Got a little light here. I might change the way that this looks. But I am coming to you live this morning from Kansas City. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about baseball. Of course, if you've never caught my broadcast before, what I do is give you historic facts that occurred on a particular day. Of course, today's edition is the November 22nd, 2025 edition. And I'm going to give you some things through the ages that occurred on November the 22nd. And then I give you some commentary from some of the things that I've learned throughout this history and talking about some of these events and people and places and things like that. Now, I talk about guys who play baseball, but they might not just be baseball players. And today I have a kind of unique one, a guy who is a trainer. So let's jump right in here and let's make some things happen. All right. So let's go back to November 22nd, 1904. And I've got to adjust my camera here, so I'm going to kind of look down just a little bit here. Let me adjust here. Okay. So in a letter to the sporting editor of the New York Standard Union newspaper, a person known only as W.E.P. wrote, "Will you kindly inform me through your next issue why are colored baseball players not allowed to play in the National and American Leagues?" And he said, if it is the color, then why will semi-professional and other independent teams and New York State and New England State League teams play colored ball teams? And that was the question that this guy, we only know is W.E.P. He gave his initials, or she gave her initials. Okay, and the newspaper's response. What do you think the newspaper's response was? Think about that for a moment, and I'm going to give you the answer. So the newspaper's response was simply this. It said, there is no rule barring colored players from the league, but an unwritten law prevails to that effect. Colored players on a team would undoubtedly be objectionable to many players. I think they meaning white players, right? And just to avoid discord, the present custom prevails. So what do you make of that? Guys, I'd love to hear your comments as to what do you make of that. They never mentioned anything about talent. Never came the word talent, never entered it. Ability, and those kind of things never entered into the conversation. So evidently it was all about race. So no matter how good a ball player was, he didn't get an opportunity. And there's some other things, kind of like oversights in this, because this whole theory of whiteness is an American concept here. Of course, I don't know about the rest of the world, but so if a guy came from anywhere in the world and he could become white, he could play. So if he had just came from Germany and he just got here, he could play. But if you were a native-born African-American player, had been here for generations, you couldn't play. It makes no sense. And the other thing was, they would allow Native Americans to play, but no African Americans. Isn't that kind of interesting? So it's really amazing how race plays into some of these things, and why it's so interesting to make these discussions today. What we do know is a lot of amazing baseball players who would have changed the history of the American and National League as we know it today, record-wise, never got an opportunity to play. I'm going to take this shade. I got a shade over here. I'm going to pull it down. Kind of bright. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Actually, I got two of them over here. I might go and get the other one, the two, in a moment. So anyway, yes. So that gives you just an idea, guys. And this is baseball history. So I'm kind of going back and talking into baseball. Let's go to November 22nd, 1924. Here's another one. This is Sylvester Foreman. Now, I happen to know some of his family. Playing right field for the Kansas City Monarchs All-Stars, picked up 3 hits as his team defeated the Los Angeles White Kings by a 6-3 score. And Walter Dobie Moore hit safely twice, with one of his hits going for a home run. And Hurley McNair also had a pair of hits, and one of his hits went for a double. Now, Bill Drake received the pitching victory. And how about this? Buzz Arlett, the Babe Ruth of the Pacific Coast League, who hit 33 home runs in 1924, finished the day by going 1 for 4 with no home runs against Bill Drake. How about that? So here we go. We're talking about this particular game. Now, I just gave you some details of the game. Let me give you some details of some of the people. I did interview Sylvester Foreman's sister, and Sylvester is buried in Coffeyville, Kansas. And I went several years ago and went to the cemetery and laid a wreath at his grave. Sylvester Foreman was a guy who played for the Kansas City Monarchs. He was a backup catcher, and he joined them, I think, originally in 1921 with a cousin named Zach Foreman, who was also on the team. And so I was able to kind of hone in on that history. And then also Bill Drake. Bill Drake was from Sedalia, Missouri. I don't know how much you know about the Sedalia, Missouri, but that was a great baseball town. And they had teams going back to the turn of the century. Really, a really good town. Actually, Scott Joplin, the famous ragtime pianist, is from Sedalia, Missouri. So I've had a chance to go there and present many times and talk about Bill Drake and his contribution. Bill Drake played for a number of teams. A lot of people will put him with the St. Louis Giants. Of course, he played for a team called the Browns Tennessee Rats. The Tennessee Rats were a barnstorming team out of Holden, Missouri. They never were from Tennessee. And what they would do is they were traveling, and this is before night baseball. So they would travel, and they had a baseball team, but they were also a minstrel show. So they would come into town, and they would play their baseball game in the daytime, and then they would play at the minstrel show in the evening. And so that was Brown's Tennessee Rats. Walter Brown was the leader of that organization, and he was a cornet player, and I'm a trumpet player, so I kind of respect that quite a bit. So I see some people joining here. Let me say something to some people joining, okay? I want to welcome everybody, and it looks like we have some new people here. And somebody says, what am I yapping about? You know I'm yapping about baseball because I love baseball, and hopefully you do too, and this is a good place for you. So we got Carter Baseball 21, then we got, I'm not sure, Z Daniels Skilled, I think. Then we have somebody, RR Video 185, and then we've got Caston Willis. And I love baseball. I appreciate that, brother. I do too. And we have, who else we have? Okay. We have somebody named, I know, KRITORISS. He says, good to see a man that knows baseball. Hey, I know a little bit about baseball. I've got about 9 or 10 books, guys. You have to look me up. I'm Phil S. Dixon. And I am a co-founder of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, and I'm just a person who really loves baseball and has been talking about it for over 45 years. I started when I was in my 20s, guys, and before then, I collected baseball cards going back to the 2nd grade. So I've been all baseball and all sports history probably since I was the age of 7, 8, 9 years old. So I can bring you a lot of information here. So anyway, thank you all for joining. And if you stay just for a little bit, I appreciate that. If you stay for the whole broadcast, certainly appreciate that. But I know everybody's schedules are busy. But if you like what I'm doing here, go ahead and hit a subscription, and that would be great. I see somebody joining from Utah. Hey, Utah had a great team too, an African-American team called the Occidental team. They won the state championship in 1909. I'll be talking about them probably in a day or so because they left Utah and went out to California and played Winter League Baseball. And so their names come up quite a bit. All right, so let me go to the next fact I have. I have November 22nd, 1931. In the second game of a doubleheader, Leroy Satchel Paige, you probably heard of him, struck out 13 of the San Diego batters and tossed a one hitter in a 1-0 win at Los Angeles White Sox Park. Now, the White Sox Park was the home of Negro League baseball on the coast in the wintertime. Now, Joe Peroni operated that field, and the teams would come out there and play. Now, Lefty Nielsen of San Diego, this is going to be a white pitcher, he's pitching in the game, and he also tossed a one hitter in the losing effort. So can you imagine? That's a great game, second game of a doubleheader, and you want to stick around. And a lot of times they would pitch Page in the second game of the doubleheader because he was the big name, and that would keep fans at the ballpark. So that way you can sell more peanuts, more beer, more hot dogs, because people are going to stay around because they want to see Satchel Paige, all right? So anyway, somebody said, you're the Phil Nixon. How about Phil Dixon? Sometimes I tell people when I want to spell my name, I said it's Phil Dixon, like President Nixon, but with a D. So that's what I say. Anyway, all right then. So I see Krito. I'm not sure you pronounce that. Kritoris. And he said, "Oh wow, you must." I think I've seen your picture before. I think you've followed me on some other social media networks. So thanks for joining. Okay, so we had that one, and let's go to November the 22nd, 1932. And here's a little known fact. Phil Bean, an African-American trainer who had worked for the Louisville Colonels. Now, that's in the American Association, by the way, for over 20 years, died at the Louisville City Hospital after a long illness. And most people don't know, many of these white teams, even though they would not allow black players on their teams or in their leagues, they did employ what they call black trainers. And these were guys who, going to rub you down after the game. They're going to look after, your health. If you're sick or something like that, they had all kind of concoctions they could give you to get you going. If you had a sore arm, they're going to show you how to work that arm. They're going to keep you in condition. So Phil Bean was one of the famous ones. And then some ball players. Harry Buckner became a trainer for the Milwaukee Brewers, and his brother was a trainer for the Chicago White Sox. And there was a guy, I'm trying to think of his name right now. He was the trainer for John McGraw's New York Giants. And when this guy passed away suddenly, John McGraw cried real tears. So these guys were there, and they were trainers, and we don't give enough credit to the trainers and what they knew and how they could keep a guy going. And why did so many teams have these African-American trainers? Is that something we need to look into and talk about? So that's interesting, but Phil Bean died on that day. I do have a couple other things I have here that I want to mention. I was looking over a Cumberland Posey all-star team from 1935. And some of these names I mentioned, of course, Satchel Paige is going to come up because he had a great season in 34. Dizzy Dean pitched against Satchel Paige in the fall of 1934. And Dizzy Dean said, hey, he said, if you could get him and me on the same team, we could win the pennant by the 4th of July and go fishing till the World Series start. So Satchel Paige appears 34, 35, but this is an all-star team after the 35 season. So he picked Cumberland Posey. Of course, Cumberland Posey is the owner of the Homestead Grays, and he is also the only person who's in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame and the Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame from the Negro Leagues. I don't know if anybody else is from American National League, but we certainly know Cumberland Posey is. So here's his team that he picked. Okay, he picked Judd Wilson at third base. That's a good, strong pick. That guy could not only hit, man, he could hit with power, and he picked up hits in bushel baskets. He had Chester Williams. Interesting pick because he picked Chester Williams over Willie Wells, and Willie Wells was no soft touch. So Chester had to be awfully good. I want to look a little bit more into Chester's season. Chester played with the Pittsburgh Crawfords that year. Is a second baseman. He picked Sammy T. Hughes. Now, what's interesting, Sammy T. Hughes played for Nashville, but what's interesting about the second base choice, and I tell people this all the time, there have been a number of African-American players put into the Baseball Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, New York, but there's no second baseman. And so we need to have this more serious discussion about second baseman. And whenever that comes up, of course, we're going to talk about Sammy T. Hughes. We're going to talk about George Scales. We're going to talk about New Allen. And who else? Bingo DeMoss. And I can go on. There's a few more that we need to be talking about. Charlie Grant is another one from around the turn of the century we need to be talking about, because these are strong players. Or somebody says they had to go, hey, no problem. Thanks for joining. Hit that subscription if you want to come back and join some other time. All right. Thanks a lot. Carter Baseball 21. All right. It's his first baseman in 1935. No mystery here. He picked Buck Leonard. Buck Leonard was on the way to becoming outstanding. Of course, so far, Judd Wilson and Buck Leonard are both members of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. Now, that doesn't make them super special, but it just lets you know that those two guys at least gotten their just due, along with the all-time greats. But there's more guys on this list that should be considered. Of course, for his pitching staff, he used two pitchers, both of them right-handers. Of course, Satchel Paige, the one I mentioned. Of course, he mentioned Leroy Matlock. Leroy Matlock is from Moberly, Missouri. Been down there and presented many times. And Leroy passed away in Minnesota. So, all right, for his outfield, he picked Vic Harrison, one of the fields, Rap Dixon in another field, and Turkey Stearns in another field. So Vic Harris, his wife Dorothy was a big supporter of mine, and I have a lot of great stories about Vic Harris that I really haven't shared, but I will. Vic Harris, I thought he should have gotten into the Hall of Fame last year, because this guy was not only a superb baseball player, he was a great manager and did so much for black baseball, especially in the East. And he's been on the Hall of Fame, up for the Hall of Fame in the last two times around with the kind of old timers ballot, but he didn't get in this past year. I was kind of disappointed in that. I'm still pushing for him. And then, of course, Rap Dixon. Man, this guy had a golden arm and a powerful bat. He hit the first that we know of. He was the first black person to hit a home run in Yankee Stadium. How about that? 1934, year before this. And of course, Turkey Stearns. Man, I can say a lot about Turkey. I know his daughter real well. By the way, I did interview Rap's brother, Paul. But I knew I just recently came back from Cleveland. And I was there with Turkey Stearns' daughter. She was on the program, and she has some wonderful things to say about her dad. Man, this guy, Turkey Stearns, when asked, how many home runs do you think you hit in your career? He said, I have no idea. He said, but I'll tell you this, I only counted them if they won ball games. This guy was a great player. Turkey Stearns, Norman Turkey Stearns, out of Montgomery, Alabama, right in that area, Alabama player. So Dixon was from Stilton, Pennsylvania, and Harris was born in Florida, but grew up in Pittsburgh. All right, his catcher, no surprise here. He had Josh Gibson. No surprise there. Josh Gibson was an all-time great and somebody that you'll want to look up if you don't know much about him. This guy hit a ton of home runs, and that's Josh Gibson. And I won't spend too much time on him, but you can read up on Josh Gibson. I do know his great-grandson, Sean Gibson, who runs the Josh Gibson Foundation. So look that up. They can always use your charitable contribution. All right. And then for his other catcher, he used T.J. Young. T.J. Young, Thomas Jefferson Young. You know, Thomas Jefferson Young was the catcher for the Kansas City Monarchs. He went by T.J. Young. He was originally out of Oklahoma. I interviewed his brother, Maurice, on many occasions, even went to his funeral when he passed away. And they were around the area of Okmulgee, Oklahoma. And Doolittle Young was just a fascinating guy. And I learned a lot from Doolittle Young, and he was big on religions. And so the first time I learned about the House of David and Benjamin Parnell was from Maurice Doolittle Young, TJ's brother. So TJ passed away in Seattle. Now, TJ, when he played ball, his best friend was Chet Brewer. Interesting thing, Thomas Jefferson Young, you know, he's named after a American president, but his best friend was Chet Brewer, and Chet Brewer's name was Chester Arthur Brewer, also named after United States president. How about that? All right, so we're just kind of dancing here, dancing through this. Let's go to let's go to somebody who was born on this date. Born on this date. Okay, no. Okay, we will go. Yeah, born on this date. Let's go to born on this date. Fred Bankhead, one of the famous brothers, the Bankhead brothers. Fred Bankhead was born on this date. He was born in Alabama. Now, the family kind of grew up in Empire, Alabama. Now, they went on to have 5 brothers who played in the Negro Leagues. How about that? I did get a chance to interview their sister. She was living in New York, and I interviewed her, and she gave me lots of interesting information. I think I didn't pull my notes before this, but I'm almost sure that Fred went to Daniel Payne College. And they were AME, African American Episcopal, and I am too. So I know about those schools, and Daniel Payne was one of them. Wilberforce was another AME college. Morris Brown was another AME college. And from time to time, you hear me talk about football scores, especially from Wilberforce, because they had a powerhouse guy up there, Wu Fang Ward. Man, this guy was something else. Great football player. These guys would have been National Football League legends. Instead, when I came along, they're teaching me about crazy leg Elroy Hurst, and I never heard of Wu Fang Ward, but I've been talking about him ever since I discovered him because he was just outstanding. And I mentioned Jumping Joe Wiggins all the time, who went to Fisk as well. So anyway, Fred was born on this date in Memphis, and he died in the early 1970s, and he passed away from a car wreck down in Memphis, Tennessee. And that was Fred Bankhead. Let's go to one more, T.J. Brown. T.J. Brown, who was a shortstop for the Memphis Red Sox. Man, I don't know if I probably heard 3 words about T.J. Brown, and his name was Thomas Julius Brown. Originally born in Des Moines, Iowa. Now, I've been to Des Moines quite a bit. And he had left Des Moines, his family left Des Moines. They went to Moline. So he went to East Moline High School. Of course, that's up in the Quad Cities. I've actually spoken in East Moline. And I've never presented in Davenport, but I used to be a musician. And we would go up to the Quad Cities area all the time. And we would play a place called Woody's Magic Room in Rock Island, Illinois, across the street from the projects, man. And we would go up there and we'd play. And before we start playing, we'd always drink a lot of soda pop, and we'd get those knee-high. Yeah, I think knee-high soda pops. That was pretty big in Illinois. And bands from around the area, especially Davenport, they would come across the river because the Mississippi River is right separating Iowa from Illinois, and they would come over and hear us play. Woody's Magic Room, it was one of the great places that many people played. I remember they had a wall, it's kind of like a wall of fame in the dressing room, and people would write their names on the wall of their bands. So we were happy to put our name there, but when I was looking at the wall, I would just sit there in the dressing room, look at the wall, and I would see people like Gene Chandler. You remember Gene Chandler had Duke of Earl, he played there. Archie Bell and the Drells, I remember those 2 specifically being on the wall. But it was a great stop as you went into Chicago to go to Woody's Magic Room. And you guys, I don't know if these kind of memories resonate with you, but this has been my life. I was a musician first, and of course I've always followed baseball because I've always loved this game. And when I was up in the Quad Cities, they had a team over in Davenport, and so if you came across the bridge, you would see the park there, Muni Stadium, I think it was. And so we would go there and see games while we were in the area. Of course, when you left Kansas City, once you got in that area, you could pick up the Cubs and the White Sox on the radio. And I had a good friend who played trumpet in the band with me as well when we were touring. We were playing funk music, by the way, guys. And Fred was a big baseball guy. He had played baseball, Little League, in the same community I did. And so we would always make sure we picked up the baseball game. And so, but this guy, I'm gonna tell you, his name is Thomas Julius Brown. I'm gonna spend some more time on him. He let's see, he was born in 1915 and he died in 1973. That was the year before I graduated from high school. He made his debut with the Memphis Red Sox in 1939. So, anybody from the Midwest, I always like to know about. Now, I will tell you this: another great shortstop that I did know from the Quad City areas, and that he was from Davenport, Iowa, and that was Gene Baker, who later played for the Chicago Cubs. Is a second baseman right along next to Ernie Banks. Interesting thing, I remember talking to Gene. I said, "What do you remember about your first day in the big leagues?" And he was talking about when he went to the Cubs. He said, "The thing I remember most is that I played second base." He said, "I had never played second base in the minor leagues. I was a shortstop. But they had picked up this kid named Ernie Banks, and they put him at shortstop, and then they put Baker at second base." He said he never was a second baseman until Ernie Banks showed up. So anyway, guys, that kind of does it for me this morning. It's Saturday. Still a lot of college football going on, but I appreciate you joining me. I used to try to end it about 30 minutes, but I did my all-star team today from Cumberland Posey from November of 1935, so that kind of ran me over, but we're going to be able to get out here about 26, 27 minutes. So, guys, if you've never seen my broadcast before, but you like what I'm doing, go ahead and hit a subscription, guys. That will help me to keep this broadcast going and as I deliver information. So somebody joining me from South Africa. Okay, guys, that's quite a way. Somebody from Utah. And let's see. Somebody said, "You're the real Phil Nixon." No, Phil Dixon. And so anyway, guys, I'm going about to pass off this broadcast, and I'll be back again tomorrow to talk about this day in Black baseball history. I'm just looking here, guys. I've got about 5 or 6 things that are really good for tomorrow. So a little basketball, a couple guys being born, talking about a little college football, baseball players playing college football, even talking about an umpire tomorrow. So, all right, guys, thank you. And if you really like what I'm doing, go back and look at a few of my old broadcasts. I started about 4 months ago. Man, I'm dropping as much information as I can because I want you to enjoy what I've learned about the Negro Leagues, okay? Thank you, guys. You have a nice day and enjoy your Saturday. This is Phil Dixon, Phil S. Dixon, signing out for now. Have a nice day. Bye.